Hello, one and all, and welcome back to another episode of The Damage Show with me, John Arola. It's a Thursday. Ooh, you don't know who you're gonna get, unless you were watching yesterday's show, because I did preview it there. But I can see in the chat, there's already a lot of excitement out there for the return of the Luke Beasley. Luke, how's it going?
It's going good. Every time I see your beautiful face, I get a little pumped about the day.
Thank you.
It really boosts my energy, so I'm hyped now.
The compliment is nice. The shoulder movements are nice. I'm getting a little bit fired up just from that. I'm feeling warm all of a sudden, which is nice because, as I told you before the show, this is the coldest room that has ever existed on Earth. And by the way, I don't even know how this happened. I made coffee before the show. The coffee came out colder than the water had been. That's not how coffee is supposed to work. What is going on in America? But anyway, that's all bad. That's cold, but you're nice and warm, which is great for the show. So thank you for being here. I hear you had a big interview recently.
Yes, we were chatting before we started. Hunter Biden somehow randomly was an avid viewer of the show. And so when I reached out, he was like, you know what? He has a crazy schedule right now with interviews. He's showing up everywhere. Yeah. And I was like, we gotta make this happen. And so then after him being very nice about letting us do an in-person interview, I made him very uncomfortable in the first few minutes. And I asked him if he were gay, if he would be into me. That was one of my first questions, John. That's a little bit of as a teaser to the audience. So you can find that on my channel at Luke Beasley. But it ended up being a really interesting interview. And I had a lot of fun with it.
That does sound awesome. You had my attention now. You have my curiosity. I don't remember exactly how that quote goes, but I do want to watch the interview. That sounds like a lot of fun. Okay. Well, now I want to have Hunter Biden on and ask him, okay, but if you were like really gay, which of us would it be? That's what I want to ask Hunter Biden.
He told me that he's into he would hypothetically be more into a more masculine archetype than me, so maybe you have a chance.
That is a great response, by the way. That is very funny. I like it. And now I want to be roasted by Hunter Biden. Okay, well, we're going to try to set that up. In the meantime, we have plenty of terrible people to roast in our own right. Not only Donald Trump for the continued chaos in Iran, but Pete Hegseth, who needs to be like escorted to work every day by his wife or something, which I think is hilarious. We've got some updates on some of the big Senate races. We're going to talk about Ken Paxton. We're going to talk about Darlene Graham, the fallout from maybe one of the worst debate answers in recent political history. We're also going to be talking about, you remember when Trump sent the National Guard into DC and cured all their crime problems? And I was like, hey, I think this is BS. I don't think that's what's happening. Well, we've now got more than a year of data to analyze. We're going to take a look at what effect the National Guard actually had in DC, which to me is one of the stories I'm most excited about. We will, of course, have an aftermath if you're watching live, and we'll be ending the aftermath with one of the, I think, most compelling videos of a vote in the Senate chambers I've ever seen. And it focuses on Mitch McConnell, not so much what he's doing during the vote, but what he's not doing for a very long period of time. So I think it has a lot to say about the health problems he's having. So check that out to close out the show. For now, hit the like button, share the stream, send us your comments, your tweets, your super chats, and all that. And with all that said, Luke, are you ready to do the show?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay, let's jump into this. Donald Trump is clearly running out of options to end the war that he, for some reason, decided to start. So now he's trying to go after them economically. And I know what you're thinking. Hasn't he been doing that the whole time? And yes, I think he's been trying to, but now he's serious about it. Now he's going to really hit them where it hurts, even though there is no evidence that this is going to work. None of these strategies are going to work, and the war just keeps marching on. But here's what he posted on Truth Social. No one has given the Islamic Republic of Iran a greater opportunity to make a capital D deal than me. Tragically, for them, they have failed to take it. Therefore, today, I am announcing the most crushing economic operation ever taken against any country. This will be capitally economic warfare and isolation on an unprecedented scale. They're gonna feel as isolated as a country as he does from his wife. That's how bad it's going to be. He goes on about the whole thing about how their military is destroyed for all the effect that has on his ability to prosecute the war. And so basically the idea is, it's not that he's doing much to that. It's that he's making threats against anyone who would help them. Okay, so he says, sorry, I'm gonna go back to that. Today, I am also announcing that any country that allows its financial institutions, businesses, airports, or government entities to provide any type of lifeline to Iran will itself face tremendous economic consequences. So you can't do oil smuggling, swap lines. I think that's what Don Jr. does. Cash transfers, exchange houses, ship registries, front companies. It all needs to stop now. You know who you are. Which really undercuts like the tough boy vibe of the message. But if you know who they are, then just say who they are. Apparently, they're aiding our vicious enemy of Iran. Why are you hiding their identity? Although I say that facetiously, I do have one idea of why it's hiding their identity. We'll get to that in just a minute. But anyway, blah, 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 blah. The maniacs are on the ropes. Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. Blah, 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 blah. So he had a press conference where people, I think very reasonably, were like, but like, what do you mean by any of this? What are you actually going to do? And here's his almost complete non-answer.
The Treasury Secretary says that we could see the most impactful sanctions on Iran this week. When will they come, and what else can we sanction on Iran?
Well, we have things that we could sanction. We have very draconian sanctions, and we'll see what happens. Right now, the strait is open. We got a lot of boats are coming through. People aren't reporting that, and that may slow down a little bit at some point. But right now, a lot of boats are coming through.
Yes, lots of boats are coming through. So I don't know about you. You're probably as cool as me. You go to HormuzStraitMonitor.com every day to see how many boats have transited. It was one yesterday. One did. That's lots of boats, I guess. I don't know what not a lot of boats would be if one went through. There's 150 waiting. They're just waiting because they can't actually go through. So we got sanctions, but we already have the sanctions. He lies about their military again. He lies about the Strait of Hormuz again. Luke, I'm sorry to do this to you. I realize that we are in kind of like a foreign policy Groundhog's Day, but what do you make of this?
We were talking about before the show that even when I put on my own rundown for my own show, any topic related to Iran, I went a little bit because, let me start with not because it's unimportant, it's the issue right now, the geopolitical matter. So you want to keep audiences updated on it. And if you, as an individual story, assess the things that Trump is doing day to day in relation to Iran, every day it is a major headline-worthy story. But the reason why it's difficult to cover it one day after another, like you said, Groundhog Day, I think maybe I said that. It's because you kind of run out of different ways to say this is insane. He's flip-flopping every 2 seconds. He obviously doesn't know why he got into this and how he would get out of it. And there are only so many words you can use to describe that concept. In this case, one little thing I noticed, did you see he described his own planned sanctions as draconian, which is kind of a weird thing to describe. My administration's getting so draconian, so bad. It's going to be great. And yeah, I don't know how much more economic leverage we could possibly place. We've tried for decades to isolate them in all different ways. This kind of reminds me of, he sits in the Oval Office with the people like, I know Maggie gets very upset if you mention her name, but Natalie or whoever it might be around him who are like, yes, you're amazing, you're so strong. And if he suggests maybe we sanction them and they know, oh, there's not really much more we could do that would put meaningful pressure on them, they're going to tell him that. So then he just gets to do this little dog and pony show and the MAGA accounts be like, yeah, this is so powerful. But if you want to get a little insight into how reasonable his plan may be, he thought we could tariff them. Like, that's just an example of one of the things he announced that was so powerful a few weeks ago. He was like, we're going to tariff Iran very strongly, which of course doesn't make any sense because what trade are we doing with Iran?
Yeah. I don't know. We're trading, I don't know, the remaining goodwill we have around the world for, I don't know, something eventually corrupting Trump. I don't know what trade is going on. And yeah, I feel that same frustration. And I have for, I don't know, the last 4 months of the war or whatever, because obviously it is important and we need to cover it. I fear that people are sort of just ignoring it now. You know that like the overall like opposition to the war has actually slightly decreased in some of the polls I've seen. And I think that's just because just people aren't really thinking about it. But I do want to be clear, we're still spending tons of money doing this. It's not like all the aircraft carriers, it's not like we're not getting that for free or anything. All these operations are still wildly expensive. But yeah, people I don't think are super focusing on it. And I do think that the Abraham Lincoln story is broken through a little bit. That has sort of like a human component to it that makes it easier for people to grasp. It's something new. And seeing the families on the one side trying to raise the I think valid concerns about their family members on the aircraft carrier, and then having like Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth just calling them like liars or whatever, that also has some conflict and drama to it. But let me add a little bit of drama, okay? I want to make this exciting. So Trump said in that thing, we're gonna skip past, Iran is saying it's not gonna work on them, the economic stuff, and I don't know, Iran's prone to lying, obviously, but also it doesn't really seem like they want a deal, so the economic stuff doesn't seem to be working, so I sort of buy what they're saying. In that first message, though, Trump said, you know who you are. Yeah, Trump, but so I know who they are, too. I know one of those countries that is helping Iran. You know who it is? It's Russia. They're shipping explosives to Iran to bolster its missile and drone arsenal in the war with the US. So they're providing, by the way, all sorts of aid to Iran, but in particular, they're helping them to reconstitute their missile and drone arsenal. Like, when they kill US soldiers in the future, it will be in no small part thanks to Russia. That's Trump's boy. That's his bro. That's his good time party guy. Like, and they're helping to potentially kill our soldiers, blow up our ships. And so no wonder Trump doesn't want to say who it is. He needs to look like he's being tough, but he doesn't want to say Russia is screwing us over, Vladimir Putin is a treacherous liar, because first of all, I think he's scared of Vladimir Putin, and also because he looks up to him. And so this is an opportunity where he could be tough. There's an actual villain you could stand up to, but he doesn't have it in him, Luke. What do you think?
That's a great point. Oh, I didn't even think about that. Because this happens a lot with Trump's very unique, only existed once ideology, which is not an ideology. Because an ideology has principles. And then usually, even if you disagree with it completely, there's some coherence to it. You can go, okay, so this is your core value, which leads to this, which leads to this. So if you have some of these like Republican neocons and you're gonna argue with them, great, that's what I wanna do too. But I can understand the broader theory of their ideology. It goes this, it goes okay, all these regimes you don't like, and you think that we could use our military to bring about a better world through force, even though history contradicts that. But okay, that at least I can follow. The thing that's so difficult about covering Trump and that causes contradictions like this is there isn't any ideology to follow. He's going all off of vibes. One of the vibes being his admiration for and lust for dictators who he kind of wishes he could emulate, like Putin. And so then you're faced with an enemy in one part of his brain, being Iran, but then their close ally, which he sees as an ally, being Russia, and he will not be able to intellectually square that. So then we all sit on the sidelines going, what the heck is happening? We're supposed to be mortal enemies with this regime that's being backed by this regime, but he definitely won't call it that one because of it. The most surface level reason being his weird admiration for Putin.
Super frustrating. Not necessarily surprising, but super frustrating. Okay, well, we've got a quagmire over in Iran. Let's talk about one of the reasons we can't seem to make any headway. That is, of course, Pete Hegseth. He's not qualified for the job. He never should have had it. The entire thing is ridiculous. Let's focus now on one of the most ridiculous parts of it. Pete Hegseth doesn't want women on the battlefield. He doesn't want them in the leadership of the military in general. He's been very clear about that. So it's doubly ironic that he seems to be so dependent on a strong, powerful woman for him to do his job. That would be his wife, Jennifer, whose presence at the Pentagon is apparently so frequent now that even world leaders are starting to get a little bit weirded out by it. So let's dive into how she's gotten involved with Pete Hegseth, why it's gotten to the point where the New York Times is writing articles about it. So she apparently goes like all the time with him to work. Like how I drop my daughter off at preschool, except I stay in that metaphor. I would just stay all day long watching her. That's what happens with his wife. So she preps him for appearances, sits in on meetings with journalists, interviews potential members of his staff, which I'm sure he has people whose job it is to do that, and brainstormed ideas for the Defense Department videos that he, and sometimes even she, appears in. Last year, she was in a highly sensitive meeting with her husband and top British defense officials after the United States temporarily stopped sharing military intelligence with Ukraine. The British in the meeting apparently would only speak in general terms about what was going on because the presence of Miss Hegseth made them uneasy. Later, they had a smaller meeting without her to go into detail. It wasn't that nice of her to let her little baby boy go to a meeting without her being a shepherd. Anyway, she's also apparently encouraged Mr. Hegseth's adversarial relationship with the news media. And although she was a journalist for 2 decades, she has worked with her husband to bar reporters from the building. So she's also a job traitor in that way. Anyway, so John Yulia used to work as the chief spokesman at the Pentagon under Pete Hegseth. It's recent work. He said this: "It's bonkers that a defense secretary would involve his wife in his sensitive official duties, including sharing details on an impending military operation, and face zero consequences. Any president deserves better judgment from his national security leaders." Yeah, they maybe deserve it. I don't know that they should expect it when it's Pete Hegseth. He's the guy from Fox and Friends Weekend. He's a guy he's a big fan of liquor and not a big fan of consent. Like, that's what you're getting with Pete Hegseth. Who thought he was going to be some sort of tactical or strategic genius? Nobody does. So you're probably wondering why? Why all of this? Why does she have to be there at all? You'll notice my wife isn't in the room with me right now. She trusts me to get through an episode of TDR. Anyway, one person familiar with Mr. Hegseth's thinking said that the defense secretary likes his wife to travel with him to keep him out of trouble. Mr. Hegseth, who has a history of heavy drinking, has himself made clear he needs his wife at his side. He often credits his 2 J's, Jennifer and Jesus, with transforming his life. By the way, it is very much not clear that she even has a security clearance to be in any of these meetings. But okay, so the cover story is that he needs her to keep him out of trouble. I love that we have a defense secretary who needs someone to make sure he doesn't get into trouble. He's a grown-ass man. You're supposed to make sure that you don't get into trouble. But also, that's when you're traveling. Why is she going to the Pentagon with you every day? What trouble are you getting in a meeting in the Pentagon? We can't trust you to get through a normal 9 to 5 in an office building without, getting wasted? Taking your pants off, assaulting someone? I'm being kind of an a-hole, Luke, but I literally don't even know what he means. What would he be doing if she wasn't there? What do you think?
Oh my gosh, so many thoughts. This reminds me of the Mike Pence mommy.
Yeah, a little bit.
Mommy has to always be around, otherwise what? He'll just start pleasuring himself to women. He has to have his wife there at all times so he doesn't start grabbing at people. This is okay, let me list these thoughts. First one being, I don't understand these only Republican men who, this comes up multiple times, who need their significant other with them at all times. I think it's maybe in part to keep him from drinking. I think the big aspect, and I see this even in my personal life with some right-wing relationships, there's just a complete lack of trust that the man can keep himself from cheating. And so it's I need you to be there all the time, otherwise I just can't help myself. I'll start grabbing at people, and so you have to be there to monitor me. I think Pence was the one who said he tries to never go into a room with a woman unless his wife is there. Why? What is that? What kind of reaction do you have when a human female is around you that you need someone to be there to physically restrain you or something? It's so crazy. The second point is, this comes up a lot. You'll have people who advocate against women in leadership, Hegseth being an example. And remember, it's more than just speculative, or he made a remark about this, that, or the other thing in relation to the military. His pastor, his spiritual advisor, I think is Doug Wilson his name? He, on the record, said, yes, in our church, in the religious belief system that Hegseth is a part of, we do not believe women should have the right to vote. And so you have this contradiction, too, where somebody who theoretically rails against the idea of women taking leadership roles actually relies on that in their personal life.
Yeah.
And it even reminds me of there are some right-wing women who say that same sort of women should just be in the home and men should be the only ones who are leaders. And then they're like huge bosses in their own lives, or they're very profitable podcasts or something. It's like, wait, you're living within the framework that was created by the feminist derailers. And so that part of it's infuriating too, that you know, again, based on his subscribing to this pastor and his ideology, that he does not believe in the very framework that allows for his wife to have this powerful role. It's crazy.
Yeah, and it's also like the general belief that these women haven't earned it. They don't deserve it. They're too emotional. Meanwhile, he needs a chaperone to get through a day at his job. A job that he wasn't qualified for and doesn't deserve. So much of it is just projection. Projection and a complete unwillingness to just see yourself for who you are. Again, secretaries of defense will take their wives to work every day rather than get therapy. That's basically what I'm working at. Anyway, with that said, let's end with one more military story, but a little bit of a lighter story. Kind of, I guess. Let's jump into this. I would do anything to play me some GTA 6, but I don't think I'd invade Iran for it. And that is unfortunately the deal that's being offered to some active duty soldiers right now. See, they're having trouble with their re-enlistment rate. They need people to sign back on for more years of service. They don't really want to do it, maybe because we're in a stupid war. They're being served moldy, rotten food. So here's what they're offering.
That's what you wanna do.
The U.S. Army unit in Georgia is offering active duty soldiers a 4-day pass to play GTA 6 when it's released this fall. The recruitment incentive isn't service-wide. It was proposed exclusively for one battalion. However, it is possible the program could be expanded. What, like if the game is popular? It's GTA 6. Anyway, the Army memo, which is circulated online, says any soldier who signs a re-enlistment contract between August 1st of this year and November 14th will be authorized for a special 4-day pass to